welcome to today's Skore user drop-in, and it's all about process ownership, titled "Who's in charge of your processes?" So we'll talk about a bit of the different roles in process improvement. We'll then look at a closer look at process ownership, since that is the focus of this session, and then we'll obviously be taking a look at how Skore supports process owners. So we'll look at some of the features, functionality that goes into supporting our process owners, and as I like to do, sort of just finishing up with some hints and tips. Well, in this session, I've called it traps to avoid. So a little teaser to make sure you stay till the end. This is a big topic, and there's no one size fits all for all the different sort of types of customers that we work with and all the different sort of projects and organisations. But if we have a quick look, and this is by no means, you might recognise this if you're a regular from one of Craig's drop-ins. I unashamedly stole it from that, and it's about different roles in process improvement. And you'll know this. You're going to different organisations, different projects. They'll all have different names, and so from process improvement lead, process performer, SMEs, subject matter experts. There's a big one missing from here, which we could have another drop-in session on the topic alone, is about the sponsor in here as well. So I'm sure Craig deliberately left that out, and I did so as well, just to sort of test people around there. But often there's like technical leads and technical SMEs as well. So we're focusing today on process ownership. The important thing to do with any of this, ideally all of this, is to define them. It's this. I know teaching people to suck eggs, perhaps, but you'll be amazed how many people we onboard where they haven't got this defined. People might have an idea of what each of these roles are, but they haven't actually taken the time to define them. And so you can see here, this is just picked out from our. I was just signposting to a few sort of assets that we've got around our COE operating model, where you can see we're actually defining that team, defining who the project leader is, defining who the process owner or what that role entails is hugely critical. Even if it changes over time, do take the time with the team to define what that actually means. So if we take that into context, let's take a closer look at the process ownership. I've put an example definition on here. So I don't want to, this is taken out of our COE. I've seen variations of this over the years. And what I thought would be more interesting to do is actually just look at some of the questions around process ownership. First one, top left, does a process owner need to be an expert in the process? In my experience, when you get someone who's a really detailed process expert, they don't necessarily make the best owner. And again, it goes back to defining that role, and also sort of bleeds into the next question, which is about what level in the organisation should they be? By which I mean, are we looking at directors? Are we looking at departments, team heads, or heads of departments or teams? Again, there's no size fits all, and it will depend a bit about what the scope of ownership is, perhaps. But in my experience, ownership can be throughout the organisation. In fact, I don't think you go too high in terms of ownership. That kind of bashes on against the sponsorship role. But I'm all up for people in quite junior roles owning a process. If you've defined it right, if you're supporting them well, why not? It delegates that ownership throughout the organisation. Makes sense. When should ownership change hands? There's an obvious ones around when people change role, either internally or leaving the business. You'll be amazed, or maybe not amazed, to see sort of actually how many companies don't have a process in place to change the ownership when someone leaves. So actually looking at your offboarding, onboarding processes for an organisation, making sure that you're checking if they own any processes and have they done a smooth handover to a new identified owner. There's also a school of thought that some organisations adopt where there's a time trigger on it. So every year changing the ownership on a process. Now, it doesn't mean they will always change ownership, but they'll review the ownership on a yearly basis to see if it's worth handing over the baton to someone else. Now, you lose a bit of consistency perhaps, but there's benefits of having a fresh pair of eyes, and sharing that and delegating that ownership on again for those processes. I quite like that approach, but again, each organisation and culture will be different. We also we'll look at what's the relationship between process owners. A lot of organisations will spend time focusing on what a process owner does and what they do for the processes, but it's really important to have that community of process owners. I've put a little link on here just to aid the discussion. If we were to look at, if this is a procure to pay example, there will be a few owners in this. Yeah, so you'll have you've got procurement processes down here, you've got accounts payable, you've got buyer processes, but the point about the end to end, the P2P, is that it's all connected. So those owners need to have that forum and that ability to engage with each other, because they might be looking at problems in their own processes that are caused by processes before, or they might be looking at processes which are going to have an impact, or changes that are going to have an impact downstream. So having that communication between process owners is hugely powerful, hugely critical in the ongoing success of the process improvement. And then again, what are they actually responsible for? This is bleeding into a few other of our drop-ins, which is good, because it means we're talking about the same things. It's common things. I've got a couple of examples here. So define it. Yeah, so you hear us talking about the process for process improvement, or the process of continuous process improvement. This isn't to say this is the definitive answer, or this is how you should and could do it. Or actually, it's not about how you should do it. This is more about how you could do it. So when you look at about here, what are we asking this process, the process owners to do? Define it in your processes. So when you come to the roles, this is quite a simple example. Sort of a lot of companies use this sort of thing as a base and then build it out. We can clearly define what that role of process ownership needs to be doing. And who are they actually interacting with? And if you are using systems, obviously that will come up in play as well. And I just put 2 links in here just to show that we have flavors of this, that get adopted. So again, just defining that role, making it obvious what a process owner has to do in context of the wider change. And then what's a good scope of ownership? Again, no one size fits all here, and this arcs back to that organization is spending the time to define an architecture, what we call process architecture, or process framework often is another term that's used. Again, this is just one example that you'll have seen us used a few times by now, but actually working out who owns what levels, how does it break down into the different processes. This is a good guide to work out what those scope of ownership should be, and then obviously linking off into other processes. It'll also help you work out how you structure your process library in terms of folders and the like. But it's just a really defining that scope, making it clear, and making sure you've got a top-down hierarchy will be super powerful when you're looking at defining that ownership. How does Skore support process owners? So this page started really simple this morning, but I've kind of elaborated, and the more I look at it, the more it gets complicated, but hopefully it also just breaks down some simple stuff. So we've Skore, every process, and what we call a process is a collection of diagrams, has a process owner. So if I go into process properties, you'll notice here I can change the process name. Your question earlier, James, yes, you can definitely change the process name. I'm doing it by that section there. But if I go to the more options, got a couple of things. We've got the process owner field. So each process you create will default to a blank owner. Take the time, go and set an owner on there. It's as simple as that. You can only have one owner on a process, so choose wisely. The other thing which I wanted to call out here is about setting the purpose of the process. Now I see that as a process owner's role, at least to validate what the editor or someone might have said. So again, that's an area where you can put that in here. What I also wanted to show you as well, this is quite a simple template, but I do urge customers to, if I just go to edit mode, in fact, to add the process owner to the process template. And you can simply do that. I'm just creating a note box up here, but you can now in Skore you have central templates that you can do. And there's a little trick here as well, that you go to a little help option down here and get your dynamic texts. So I can see here I've got the process owner. So assuming you've set a process owner against the process, I would urge you, in fact something I've done here as well is I've used the glossary, and I've put the definition of process owner into the glossary. So I can say, what's the process owner? What's the variable that comes in? And you can see here. So a little bit of starting up on here. Add it to your diagram template, and you can see here you've got a great little reminder of what the process owner is, and then a click through to access that. Simple but powerful. You can add other variables into that template as well, but that's not what we're talking about today. And then we've also got things around collaboration to help process owners. Yes, you'll be running workshops. Yes, you should be reviewing these with your teams, the processes with your teams, during regular reviews. But we've got the commenting feature where, so if you own the process, you should be having a regular look at the comments. You should be getting notifications in there to say Hams has left a comment against this process, and you go and access. You can go and action that feature. And then, of course, a big part of the process ownership should be about approval and sign off. So again, not to jump into the feature, the functionality, but the Skore has that process lifecycle baked into the application, and use it. So in fact, I think the option is, if you want to publish or request approval, great. The first, you've got that process owner option there. Add a comment, send that through, make sure that those processes are up to date. And that's another variable. That takes me over the top here. I'm not going to jump into the reporting, but we've got reports that show you when processes were last reviewed. In fact, actually, that's why I haven't talked about process reviews. But when was the process last edited and published and approved, and how many comments and all that sort of stuff. You've got those central reports available now, so it's making it easier for a process owner to go and check their processes. See what state they're in. Do we need to take action? Are there any comments or feedback that I can go and implement into my processes? And process reviews. If I just come back to my workspace here again, not to dive, we've got some deep dives into process reviews, but all processes arguably should have a review cycle against them. So you can not to go through it in step by step, but you can have, as a process owner, you can be setting up these process reviews. You don't have to be a process owner to set up a process review, but commonly that is the case. So you can go through, select what processes that appears to, who do you want to have involved in that, what's the set the dates and the recurrence on that, and away you go. And it's powerfully simple. Set them up. They can tick along, and then as a process owner, you can come back and check. Or you'll actually get notifications. In fact, who hasn't reviewed and the like. It's all there. It's all baked into Skore, as you would imagine from a process library. But it all starts with setting that owner, defining what that role is, and making sure that they understand what that role entails. So just going to finish up on traps to avoid. There's no rocket science here, but just sort of taking our advice or our experience, should I say. The trap is leaving the process owner blank. And I see this time and time again. People leave the process owner blank because they're not quite sure, or it's a task they're going to take action on later down the line. My advice is put a process owner in, even if it's wrong, because then you've got that ownership. If it's wrong, that person will pass it to someone who is right. So again, try and put that there. Another trap is not being clear on expectations. Again, that's for all the roles, and it's a theme of this drop-in. Really being explicit as to what we're asking a process owner to do, and helping them to do it. Another trap is to leaving them to it. So again, it depends on the size of the organization, but most will have a kind of a central team that's managing the platform and the whole initiative around process improvement. So make sure that you're training the process owners, you're supporting them, you're checking in with them. Have you got any problems? Also running the reports to see if processes aren't being updated for a particular ownership and taking positive action off the back of that to nurture and the like. That might be an indication it's time to change ownership. Yeah, because for whatever reason, maybe they're too busy or their focus has changed. This is a classic. Is getting confused between owner and sponsor. They are different roles. So, and they'll have different definitions, and asking a sponsor to be an owner, which is the most common mistake, doesn't bode well. Yeah, you need that sponsor to be going out and sponsoring, an ownership and a change or a department or a group of owners or whatever it might be. And again, that's a lot of that's to do with the level. And then not delegating enough. This is for any work, for any team, but especially with ownership, you don't want to have just a small number of process owners. Actually delegating it down, especially if you look at some of the lower, more detailed processes, actually pushing the ownership down the team will pay back a lot. You'll engage. You'll get a lot more engagement around your process initiatives and change. And then the other one is not providing enough resources to deliver improvements. This one actually came from Colin when I sort of shared, asked for the guys' advice. You're asking process owners to not just manage processes, but to improve them. To own that continuous improvement. The worst thing you can do is to then not support them on those changes. So, keep making sure that you've got a plan to deliver on those improvements is crucial. That's a bit of an overview about what we see as the different roles in process improvement and what process ownership is, what that actually looks like in Skore, and a little bit of our kind of hints and tips.